You probably grew up thinking Christmas was all about the birth of Jesus. A beautiful story, a sacred tradition, wrapped in lights, songs, and cinnamon-scented memories. But what if that's not the whole story? What if Christmas, long before it was called Christmas, was something else entirely? Something older, something quieter, something deeply spiritual, yet not religious at all. In ancient China, thousands of miles from Bethlehem, people gathered not to celebrate a savior, but to honor the longest night of the year, because they knew something powerful was happening, something invisible, but certain, that from this point forward, the sun would begin its slow return, each day growing a little longer, each shadow slowly lifting. It wasn't just a date on a calendar, it was a turning of the sky, a cosmic breath, a signal of renewal. There was no manger, no carols, no glitter, just silence, stillness, and the mysterious rhythm of the Tao, the way. This is not a video about rejecting Christmas. It's a journey into what lies beneath it, into the forgotten wisdom that once shaped how humans met the dark, and trusted that the light would come, not from outside, but from within. By the end of this message, you'll see Christmas in a way you've never seen before. Not through doctrine, but through the quiet eyes of Taoist wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel something shift inside. Imagine yourself in ancient China, in a small village surrounded by mountains and silent rivers. Winter nights felt endless, the sun vanished early, and darkness became an intimate presence. There was no electricity, no endless distractions, just the wind and the bite of cold. Life moved with the sky, and people learned to listen. The Tao wasn't something they studied, it was something they felt, especially in the hush of the longest nights. During the winter solstice, when the days were at their shortest, the elders would say that yin was at its peak. It marked the deepest part of the cycle, not something to fear, but something to honor. In that darkness, a different kind of awakening began to stir. Eyes couldn't help much. The spirit had to lead. And in the heart of the cold, a quiet seed of rebirth began to take root. It was common for families to gather around a small fire, listening to stories passed down through generations, tales of balance, of softness that outlasts strength, of walking the middle path. The Tao Te Ching wasn't preached, it was lived. People didn't need to read it to understand that resisting winter was futile. Real wisdom, they knew, meant surrendering to what is and finding peace inside it. Life was hard. Harvests were thin, cold was constant, time was uncertain. But they had a form of resilience that didn't come from force. It came from yielding. They honored what couldn't be seen, the ancestors, the unseen cycles, the Tao itself. Spirituality wasn't a ritual. It was how they walked, how they waited, how they endured. The silence of winter was fertile. Beneath the stillness, something sacred was always moving. This dark season wasn't seen as a mistake. It was essential to the whole. They knew that light meant nothing without shadow, and that the Tao reveals itself not in fireworks, but in what quietly sustains all things. During the longest night, simple rituals were held, not to force the sun to return, but to align with its rhythm. And in that, we begin to see that Christmas, as we know it today, may have much older roots than we realize. Long before it was called Christmas, this time of year was already sacred to many. In different lands and traditions, the winter solstice marked a quiet miracle. The sun had reached its farthest point and was now beginning to return. That was enough to celebrate, not with noise, but with reverence, because those who lived close to nature understood. Real spirituality doesn't force light. It welcomes it when it begins to rise again. In ancient Rome, there was Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, celebrated just as the light began to grow again. It was less about deities and more about rhythm. The cycle of life had turned, and hope returned with it. Later, Christianity placed Jesus' birth here, not because of history, but because of symbolism. The darkest day gives birth to light, and every true birth, of a child, a self, a path, begins in silence, in darkness, unseen. What's remarkable is how many cultures shared this knowing without ever speaking to each other. In the far north, people lit fires for Yule. In ancient China, they watched the yin reach its height and trusted that the yang would now begin its return. No celebrations needed to be grand. The Tao moved quietly. The earth responded. And the wise knew that the shift from night to light was not an event, it was a process, subtle and slow. Today, we still try to honor that shift, though often through noise, bright lights, and full calendars. But something deep inside us still remembers. This season carries a message, not of perfection or performance, but of return. The true miracle of Christmas isn't in the wrapping paper. It's in the pause. In the small sacred space where the soul whispers, "I'm still here." That space is where awakening begins. So the real question is, what kind of light are we actually celebrating? Are we still waiting for it to come from outside, through miracles, through myths, through others? Or have we begun to recognize that it rises quietly from within? The ancients knew that the return of the sun was also a return to self. And maybe, just maybe, the Tao was never about waiting for salvation, but about remembering the path home. In Taoism, the longest night of the year isn't a problem to fix. It's a threshold to cross. Lao Tzu never spoke directly of the solstice, but his words feel perfectly aligned. Darkness is the gateway to all beginnings. In this path, the dark isn't an enemy. It's the womb, the space where life takes shape before it's ready to be seen. And those who trust the dark learn that what seems empty is already becoming. The urge to escape discomfort is strong, to rush toward light, to avoid the cold, to fix the silence. But the Tao doesn't rush. It teaches that transformation begins in stillness. The body heals in sleep. Nature rests in winter. And the soul remembers itself not in the spotlight, but in quiet. From this view, Christmas isn't about a spectacle. It's a soft turning inward, where something unnameable begins to glow from deep within. This is where Taoism diverges from many traditions. It doesn't try to lift you out of discomfort. It invites you into it, gently, not to suffer, but to meet what's real, not to resist winter, but to walk through it with grace. In this light, Christmas becomes a portal, a space between cycles, not a celebration to perform, but a rhythm to enter, where light returns slowly, and only after you've surrendered fully to the dark. How do you begin this in real life? Try something deceptively simple. Spend one evening in silence. Turn off the noise. No music. No phone. Just breathe. Just be. Maybe you'll hear your own weariness. Maybe a forgotten sadness. Don't run from it. Stay with it. The Tao speaks there too. Not in words, but in presence. And it only speaks to those willing to listen without needing to fix. Christmas comes every year, but do we ever truly return with it? Or do we just repeat habits while the meaning drifts further away? Taoism invites us to return differently, to remember that every cycle carries a new teaching, even if the outer form looks the same. And maybe, just beyond the familiar music and lights, there's a quieter celebration waiting. One that begins in the soul of the longest night. In ancient China, there were no glittering dinners or crowded malls. People marked the season by slowing down, by aligning with nature, not escaping it. Small oil lamps were lit, not to banish the darkness, but to honor it. Silence was part of the ritual, not a void, but a presence. a space where the Tao could be felt more clearly, without the noise of doing. And maybe that's the real practice we've forgotten, listening to what doesn't shout. Among farmers, rituals were humble. A bowl of rice left for the spirits of the home. Tea offered to ancestors. These weren't superstitions. They were gestures of respect for what can't be seen. That's what ancient spirituality was. Not loud, not flashy, just intentional. Maybe that's all you need today, too. To light a single candle with awareness. To write one line of gratitude. To sit without goals. That, too, is a sacred act. Taoist wisdom reminds us, the most powerful rituals aren't taught, they emerge. Not from books, but from stillness. You don't need a temple. You don't need fancy words. You need attention, a slow breath, a small gesture with real presence, a cup of tea made without rush, a bath taken like a blessing, and above all, space. A pause where the ego doesn't push, explain, or prove, just rests. You can start this today. Pick one moment to do nothing, truly nothing. No scrolling, no planning. Just let the moment be what it is. At first it might feel strange, even uncomfortable, but if you stay with it for a few days, something starts to shift. The Tao begins to reappear, not loudly, not with answers, just presence. And in that presence, peace. The old ones understood this. They didn't talk about spiritual awakening. They embodied it in washing rice, in walking through snow, in watching the sky with patient eyes. Nothing dramatic, but everything sacred. And maybe the only thing we've lost is the art of making the ordinary holy again. Because when that happens, even Christmas changes its color. And in that softer tone, a quiet question returns. Today, Christmas has become a marathon. Lists, deadlines, crowds, guilt. We do it all and still feel like something's missing. The Tao offers a completely different invitation. Pause, observe, let go of what's too much. Lao Tzu said, the more we chase, the more we lose the essence. And maybe the essence here is simple, to come back to center, to return to stillness, to breathe in what matters. The Tao doesn't ask for conversion or belief, it just shows. Like a river, it moves, soft, persistent. It teaches not by force, but by example. Maybe this season isn't about doing more, but unlearning the pressure to perform, the need to decorate pain with glitter, and remembering the sacred in what doesn't cost a thing. Presence, warmth, stillness. These won't get you applause, but they will bring you home. It might feel awkward at first, like you're missing out if you don't keep up with the holiday rush. But that emptiness, it's fertile. That quiet, it's healing. The real Christmas isn't the one on display. It's the one that rises inside, slowly. Like the Tao, it doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes like a breath, like light returning 1 minute at a time. Only visible to those who wait with open hearts. So what can you do now? Maybe something incredibly simple. Maybe this year you skip a few gifts and cook something with love instead. Maybe you choose to stay off your phone and actually look someone in the eyes. Maybe you let the noise pass and light a candle in silence. These are not small things. They're portals. And when done with presence, they become the Tao in action. And if you do this, if you truly show up in this new way, you'll feel something shift. The world might not change, but your way of walking through it will. You'll realize the light you've been chasing is already here. Quiet, yes, but real. The same light the ancients honored without words. The same flow the Tao gently restores in those who stop forcing and begin trusting again. The Tao doesn't arrive once a year. It's not bound to December, or to snow, or to solstice. The Tao is always cycling, quietly, invisibly, through every breath, every season, every moment of letting go. What we call Christmas is just one ripple in a much older ocean, one pause in a spiral without beginning or end. And the beauty of the Tao is that it needs no date to return. It simply is. This is why so many ancient cultures celebrated similar truths without ever meeting. Egyptian solstices, Mayan suns, Norse evergreens, Chinese yin and yang. They didn't copy each other. They were listening to the same rhythm. The Tao doesn't need a name to speak. It shows up wherever people are quiet enough to hear it. When we realize this, something softens. We stop clinging to any one version of the story. We stop needing our traditions to be the only true ones. Instead, we begin to see the larger pattern. A spiral of light, shadow, return, and release, written across centuries, skies, and skin. The Tao doesn't divide us. It weaves us into something bigger than belief. And that's what this time of year can become, not a performance of the familiar, but a doorway to the vast. A reminder that behind every candle, every song, every tree, there's a current flowing beneath, and that current leads not to doctrine, but to the Tao, not to control, but to wonder. Maybe this is the first gift, realizing the Tao is not seasonal, it's eternal. And Christmas, when stripped of its labels, becomes something simpler. A moment to notice we are, and have always been, inside the flow. This is the season of giving, they say. But what if the most precious gifts of all don't fit in boxes? What if they don't sparkle, can't be posted, and come quietly, without receipts or ribbons? Taoist wisdom reminds us that the sacred is often invisible, that what nourishes the soul is rarely what the world celebrates. What if the real gift this year is silence, or slowness, or the way your breath feels when you finally stop pretending everything's fine? The Tao doesn't shout, it whispers, and that whisper is often enough. In ancient China, a cup of tea offered in stillness was more powerful than gold, a gesture of presence, a moment of shared breath. Today, you can do the same. A walk with no destination, a meal cooked without rush, a hand held without needing to fix anything. These are offerings. These are medicine. So often we think we must do something grand to show love. But the Tao shows us otherwise. It teaches us to be like water, gentle, yielding, essential. Maybe your soft presence this year will do more for someone's heart than any perfect gift could. You don't need to buy more. You need to see more. And what you'll see, once you slow down, is that the real gifts of this season were already here. Maybe you're tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, but soul tired. Tired of pretending the holidays still mean what they used to. Tired of showing up to traditions that feel hollow. Tired of smiling when your heart isn't in it anymore. If that's where you are, the Tao has room for you. It doesn't demand belief. It doesn't require joy. It only asks that you show up as you are, even if that means sitting in the dark, with empty hands and a quiet ache. The Tao doesn't flinch. It holds you, not with answers, but with presence. This path is not about cheer. It's about honesty. It's about realizing you don't need to perform a holiday just because the calendar says so. The world may be rushing around you, but the Tao waits patiently, exactly where you are. And maybe that's what this moment is for. Not to decorate your sadness or distract your loneliness, but to meet it fully, to breathe into it, and in that breath, to begin remembering, you are not broken. You are in a season, and the season will turn. So if this year, Christmas feels far away, know this. You haven't failed. You've simply fallen into stillness. And that's where the Tao does its deepest work. So now the question is, what kind of light are you really waiting for? Are you hoping it comes from gifts, from gatherings, from something outside pulling you into joy? Or are you willing to trust the quiet spark inside, the one that only appears when everything else goes still. You don't need to abandon Christmas. You just need to return to its root, to the rhythm that came before the noise, before the wrapping paper, before the stories we were told. Maybe this year, instead of trying to make everything feel magical, you let yourself be real. Maybe you choose one evening to sit in the dark, just for a while, and listen for the light returning, softly, from within. If this message sparked something in you, if it gave your heart a little more space to breathe, you're invited to stay. There's more to explore, more to remember, more to let go of. Subscribe to the channel, turn on reminders if you'd like, and walk gently with us as we follow the Tao, one breath at a time.